Hey, I'm Julie Lyonn Lieberman. Thanks for joining me. I think we've gotten over being considered inferior if you and I play in a style that does not come from Western Europe. I hope that we've reached a point where we all appreciate the fact that each style offers a whole different set of technical and musical challenges to the player, and that every part of the musical imagination of the world is rich and valid and important to us as a species. So now let's take a look, just a broad overview of our field. And we see that we still have, and very importantly, because they are the keepers of the traditions, we have our traditional players, our authentic players, meaning these are players that grew up in specific communities, like Michael Dessay, who grew up in the Cajun community and became the keeper of his predecessors' playing techniques and the repertoire. And we have fiddlers from many different regions of the world who play this important role and are phenomenal keepers of the traditions of their people. And then we move yet to another, shall we say, family of string players. I refer to these players as creative traditional. Let me give you an example, like Eileen Ivers. I mean, she is an incredible traditional Irish fiddler, and then she has taken that art form and pressed it forward. And when I interviewed Martin Hayes for my book, The Contemporary Violinist, there's a beautiful quote in there in which he says, you know, that just giving an example from the Irish culture, that Irish fiddlers were creative before we use that terminology. In other words, tradition came from somewhere. It came from imagination. It came from the gestalt of a whole culture developing a sound or a series of sounds. And in fact, if we continue with this Irish track for just one more moment, not to slight any other traditions, we see that we take the same tune like I did for my book Planet Musician, and I had versions. I collected versions from 5 different important fiddlers. We see that there's a very different approach technically in terms of ornamentation and interpretation and improvisation as it exists in that culture, meaning adding variations to the melody, changing where the ornamentation is placed. We see that each region, even from Ireland, has a very different approach. So even using the term Irish music or Scandinavian music, it's actually more apropos to name the region that player or those tunes come from, like the Sligo region, or well, you get the point. Okay, so traditional creative. Now we also have a whole family of players in our string world who are multi-style players. In other words, they have very seriously pursued each style of choice and learned the history and they have captured the style, to quote the name of this series, and show great respect for each style, make sure that their playing is very style appropriate as deeply as they can. And so my Julieism for that is being a multi-style player. And then to borrow from Daryl Anger, we have a family of players who are freestyle, meaning that they have learned many different styles and they may or may not be very, very true to each of those styles, but they're also putting their own signature into their sound. And of course, Daryl Anger is a great example of that.